so mostly green across the board, and I know this is the Vestact way because you always wait for positivity on the market. Exxaro, Kumba coming under slight pressure, MTN also in negative territory, Shoprite, Steinhoff, Vodacom, but everything else sitting in the green on the top 40.
Yeah, I think Exxaro and Kumba down on Goldman Sachs did a downgrade on Kumba, and that must have to do, I didn't actually read the downgrade, but has to do with the Sishen mine. It's been quite a topsy-turvy day. The market actually was in the red at some stage this afternoon when the Dow opened down because of those jobless claims which came ahead of expectations, which is a bad thing when it comes to jobless claims.
Because you want that number to come down, obviously.
Exactly. But home sales came in afterwards, which smashed expectations. And I think the general trend of this whole week has just been fantastic earnings beats from the S&P 500 companies. And at the end of the day, the equities markets is all about what the companies are doing. And companies are in great positions at the moment.
When it comes to the Eurozone, there's also a bit of concern there that has come through this week. Are you sitting up and looking at this? In the political element, I know that you don't like looking at the negative, but is there, caution to be exercised when looking at those markets?
No, of course you've got to look at every factor, and you have to factor in what's happening in the Eurozone, and you can see shifting in the politics in the likes of France going to a more socialist type of government, which you can expect, and is a kind of trend that we've seen since the financial crisis, where everyone sort of downplayed capitalism and the politics has changed and towards more socialist type ways of running countries. But I still think that the growth is not coming from Europe, and it's not something that we need to worry about. The growth is coming from the East, and like I said, I've been reading a lot of financial reports from the S&P 500 companies, and that's where all the growth is coming from, and that's fine. That's going to keep global growth at a steady pace, like the IMF said.
All right, so let's delve into some South African companies. We had Clicks out with results today. Is it a company that you would be looking at as a potential investment?
It's fairly exciting. It's one of the retail stocks that has done fantastically over the last 3 or 4 years. And, it gets a lot of criticism on a 7% growth in revenues. But historically, that's still very good. Everyone just is expecting a lot from our retail sector. It's a very competitive industry. Not only do they have to compete with Dis-Chem, but you're getting the likes of Shoprite and the big retailers actually implementing chemists within their stores. So it's very competitive. I think their wholesale, the wholesale drug business is going to be under a lot of pressure. More generics coming into the market, which decreases their margins. But I do like the business, and I do like the sector as the up-and-coming middle class of South Africa. You don't have exposure to Clicks, do you? No, we don't. We don't. We prefer a mass mart, and we in the health sector we prefer the guys who actually manufacture the drugs and the likes of Aspen.
Okay, so let's also just delve into other, resource companies which I've been looking out for. I mean, BHP is up 0.7% today. We've got Anglo American also sitting up slightly, and this has been this big debate as to where commodity prices are going, because we're worried about growth coming through from the east, but you just reconfirmed that you're not worried about growth coming through from a lot of the emerging markets, and of course we're talking about China here. What kind of exposure do you have to the resource space right now? We
heavily invested in BHP Billiton. We think that the whole resource sector needs a big re-rating. Everyone's very concerned about China, and I read the Caterpillar results that came out last night, and they did mention that construction growth in China had slowed down. But long term, they were still very happy about the growth that's happening there. I mean, the Chinese economy is still growing at 8%. That's massive, and they still have hundreds of millions of people that need to urbanize. So these resource sectors companies are trading on very low valuations because there are concerns. But I think that when people realize that the growth is still going to carry on coming strongly, and that demand is still going to be strong, they're going to start re-rating. Why
BHP Billiton over Anglo American?
Just their assets. Anglo have had some issues. There was a report a few weeks ago about their Minas Rio assets in Brazil, which is stalled again, which they happen to buy at the top of the market. BHP Billiton have situated themselves in the right assets at the right time. And they're not purely focused on iron ore, which a lot of the diversified miners, or I say diversified miners, are really reliant on iron ore. BHP Billiton are focusing on the gas. They've got good oil exposure, good copper exposure, and they operate in countries where they're very mining and business friendly.
So buy for you then, sitting at 242.
Yeah, I think it's a screaming buy. They're trading at valuations of under 10, 9, 8, and these companies are making record earnings, and they're way off their all-time highs. So I think there's a great opportunity there.
Okay, and Anglo American 295.
I like Anglo American because I'm optimistic about the resource boom, and I think that all these resource companies are undervalued. I'm just worried about some of their assets at the moment. I'm not the biggest fan of the diamonds, and I also think that the issue with Codelco might be...
You're not a fan of diamonds, Byron.
I think the issue in Chile is gonna keep rearing its ugly head with Codelco and that big copper asset. So they just need to get their their production in order, and in a world of choices, which we do have in equity, I prefer BHP.
Before I say goodbye, I'd like to interrogate you on Naspers. Did you watch what Tencent did in China over the last couple of days?
Yes, I think it was over-exaggerated. There were some issues about regulation in China, and all the tech stocks in China went down together. But when you actually read about the regulations and what was going to happen there, none of that actually affects Tencent. It was all about blogging and that kind of thing. So I think Tencent fell in China as a part of the index, but it was probably overplayed slightly.
Of course, and Naspers was down yesterday, so I'm sure you were quite bleak, but today up 1%. So
a buying opportunity yesterday.
1% down, it's 461. Would you say?
Should add some more then.
Okay, Byron, thank you so much. I hope you have a great long
Thanks,
weekend. Much appreciated for your time. Byron Lotter from Vestact.